statistics have it that a majority of children who are abused by close family members and friends, neighbors, the people who the children trust. The child develops a relationship with this person, and then the person ends up doing something to the child, doing something that violates the child, doing something that breaks the trust the child placed in this person. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we are going to talk about. We've had so many cases of child defilement. We've had it on the news, we've had it in the newspapers, we've had surveys on the same. So ladies and gentlemen, this is a matter that is affecting our society today. And that is a matter which we will discuss, we will talk about in detail. They will give us their opinions and we can proceed from there.
Okay. Thank you so much, Lindsay. My name is Hannah Nzekari Katuku. I am a law student. I'm also a student doing accounts. I am also one who really is passionate about human rights.
My name is David Macharia. I'm also a second year student in the School of Law. These are my colleagues and I'm very glad to be here. I am very passionate about human rights, perhaps because the society is moving towards that trajectory, and therefore, for me, this discussion is close to the heart. We are glad to be here.
What is your view on child defilement? What do you think the law has that defends a child, or rather protects a child from defilement?
Okay, on this question, matters child defilement, I think first of all is to understand that child defilement is we're taking this situation first of all to a minor, and according to the Kenyan constitution's minor, or rather a child, is considered to be anyone below the age of 18 years. And on matters child defilement, we can find that topic is broadly discussed in the Sexual Offence Act here in Kenya, and we can see it especially when we go to, I think it's Section 8, whereby we are seeing that when a child is defiled maybe from the age of 11 years and below, we can see that the Act provides that this child, when they are defiled, this person who defiles them should go to jail for a lifetime, yeah? And then from, I think it's 15 years, and that's now 12, 15 years, I think. I think it's not life imprisonment in this matter, but this person goes to jail for a period of, I think, around 20 years, if I'm not wrong. And again, also for the child who's below the age of 18 years, the person goes to prison for an amount of 15 years. And as I talk about matters child defilement, and I want to look at it also not just in the Kenyan context, because we are also global citizens, I would also like us to go through it in the matters and perspective of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which actually defines that a child, in the same perspective again, a child is anyone below the age of 18 years, and the rights that the child has, all that, we see it even in the Children's Act back here in Kenya. We see all the rights that this child has. And I think there was a scenario back then, just about, I'll say like 3 weeks, I saw it somewhere, whereby a 17-year-old boy had defiled a girl who was 13 years. But then when they went to court, the magistrate offered that this child, the 17-year-old boy, and the girl who was also defiled, both of them should go for counseling. And was it fair to this girl that this boy gets the same? They actually both of them got a punishment because they both go for counseling. And in the process of going for counseling, the question is, has this boy learned anything from this? And is this boy so young that they cannot understand what they did? So my concern would be that, yes, the acts, yes, all these declaration acts, all of them, they provide that a certain age, and for us, it's only a certain, especially the adults are the ones who should go to jail. That is the life imprisonment and just normal sentencing. Yeah. But then they forget that there's also someone beyond under the age of 18 years, maybe 17 years, 16 years, who still understands and knows what they're doing. But because of that, they are not taken to jail with the perspective that they're still a child. So yeah, for me, matters child defilement again is, as we think about child defilement, it goes beyond us to understand that a child, regardless the age, never has the capacity. So 1 year old, 2 years old, 8 years old, 11 years old, at the end of the day, none of them has the capacity, and none of them will consent knowingly. On matters child defilement, I would really want us to understand that when it comes to capacity, when it comes to consenting, there is no child who can consent in any matter.
Right, so the issue that you're raising here is we have children, and then there comes the question on whether this child understands, because now there are children who hide under the blanket of I will be set free for not understanding.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting point of view, Hannah. Now we will move on to David, who will give us his perspective. David?
Thank you, Lindsay. Let me take it from a historical approach on the subject. Number one, to say that the Sexual Offences Act that Hannah is talking about we inherited it from the England as we were inheriting our laws as such.
Yeah.
And therefore, we have to speak of Section 8 that defines exactly what defilement is and in what capacity can it be done. But then it goes further to the issue on incest. What happens when a child who is below age is perhaps gets into a sexual relationship with family members per se. So there are issues. Number one, on the issue of consent, we might disagree on what exactly it is.
It's allowed.
But I have had a candid discussion with one of a colleague of mine, and we were discussing this issue on Romeo Juliet, what we call defilement stories. What the age of 13 and 17. Yes.
Let me just cut you short. It's the fact that you raised Romeo and Juliet with sexual offense, when most cases when we talk about Romeo and Juliet, we want to ignore the age factor, we want to ignore the death factor and just romanticize the story. So our viewers, if you haven't read Romeo and Juliet, please go ahead, read it before you make reference to it. It was a tragic story, it was a tragedy, and that's besides the point.
Very true, very true. I think what people don't really notice in that story is that the age gap was actually 1 year, 12 and 13. But it's a world acclaimed story on romance. That is where we feature our romance stories from. But there are issues, there are actually very, 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 very grave issues that were dealt though, but we do not raise them as such. And so my point is, when we are doing the historical approach, and perhaps I will take you back to 2003 when we had a case on the same. And before that, we have to take into account what happens when someone is taken to court for defilement. What evidence do you give as such? And is the evidence of the victim of that crime expected to give evidence? And if they do, is that evidence admissible in court? So those are issues that we have to deal with. So that in 2003, when the judges were making a case, it's a famous case called Mukungu, they were dealing with the issue of whether or not the victim, the child in this case, or the lady, is his evidence, or the evidence that they give is admissible. And the court were like, no, women can fabricate stories. I know that's a very sensitive issue. They can fabricate a story. But the case again now in Minor versus Republic in 2003, the Court of Appeal now comes in and says, you know what? This decision was very unconstitutional. It's actually going against Section 82 of the Repeal Constitution. And therefore, the Parliament, what it did when it was qualifying Section 124 of the Evidence Act, was to say that a victim, whether it's a lady or a girl, their evidence alone is substantial enough to convict a felon or an accused for that. And for me, I think that is an appreciation to those the legislature was making the law at that time. Because now, when it's a question of whether or not you are the one who's the victim, but you cannot give evidence. It speaks to the gravity of that issue. So that's for me is one. On the issue of consent, this is a thorny issue. Now, one, because I think when we read Section 8 of the Sexual Offences Act and the Children's Act on who is a child, someone who is below 18 years old. And therefore, it's a question of someone who is 17 years old, do they have consent? So that subsection 1 of that Sexual Offences Act, Section 8, says that if you defiled a child who is below 12 years, life imprisonment. Below 15, 20. At below 18, you get 15. So the question is, a child or someone who is, I don't want to call them a child, someone who is maybe 17 and a half or a quarter, or do they obtain consent the moment they hit 18? It's a question we have to ask. Yes. And I happened to read the judgment of one Kiari Waweru who was a principal magistrate in 2007, and he said that I have handled cases of defilement. But one issue that comes out is that we have to be very careful, because you have a child who is 15 and the boy is 17. And then you go ahead and give the boy a sentence of 20 years and the girl walks scot-free. So it's a question of, is it fair? how fair is the system?
And do we need amends?
Do we need amends? Yes. And we have seen in America they were trying to lower the consent age to 16.
Yes.
Of course, okay, among the minister, the outcry. Of course.
Maranda tried to do that.
Yes,
And
yes.
it failed.
So there are issues, and therefore we have to ask ourselves now: when I hit 18, so do I become more wiser?
Yeah.
Or
Do I just
I know what is going on.
Yeah.
So I think these are issues. I think, and that is what Kerry Moro was saying, that we really need to have a candid discussion on the issues of consent, so that we know exactly. And there is actually a very interesting case. Normally it doesn't happen this way. Most of the time it's a man who defiles a young boy.
Yeah.
But this one was
But
an
you have
exception.
exception.
Yes.
Yeah.
This was a lady who got into a relationship with a boda guy. And this guy, he didn't know. The guy had rastas and all this. We assume that boda guys are rowdy and crude. And therefore,
unfortunately, subject for another day.
Subject for another day. In essence, you would think that this guy looked older, perhaps 35 or 40, for lack of a better word. But the parents of this boy come and they go after the woman, and they found that the boy is 17 years old. And for me, this was very funny because the court actually jailed the woman as if she was a man. For me, it was because it rarely you find that situation happening the other way around. Yes,
Okay.
but then it raises a question of, when you talk of someone who leads you to believe that they are above age, and that is the Sexual Offences Act actually does go into details of that. When someone leads you to believe, no,
what?
No,
Many under 18, a scenario like that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome back, Karibuni Sana, once again. We shall proceed with our discussions, and that is our subject today, child defilement. David, you mentioned something on deterrence, and this brings me to a case. Name's not important, but there was a case where a stepfather defiles his 1-year-old daughter. And long story short, in this case, then the ruling of the court was that, first of all, in the first court, there was a mandatory death sentence, and then the same was lowered to 75 years imprisonment, which, if you look at it in the grander scope of things, he will be there for the rest of his life. Yeah. Then that begs a question on deterrence. By merely jailing this person for life or letting them rot in prison, as some would say, is that an aspect of deterrence, or does more need to be done? Does more need to be done so that when I'm sending this person to prison, hiyo ni funzo, how they say it, iwe funzo, iwe onyo, to whoever is going to attempt to.
Me personally, if I were just sitting in a bench and someone came to me as a stepfather who raped a 1-year-old child, I would perhaps jail them and then pursue them to hell, for that, if that were possible.
Okay.
Because for me, I feel like that's it shouldn't happen.
It's just wrong.
It's wrong. It's not actually wrong. It's evil, for lack of a better word. But we have to look at issues on those of us, or those of them. Yeah, those of them who are found perhaps to have defiled, and I'm talking about this so much. 17, 16, 15, you give them 15 years, or you give them that 75 years, or you give them life imprisonment. Really, how have you...
Then, so yes. What is the objective?
Yeah, so what's the objective?
Jailed, now what?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, it begs questions of, do we really need to check on, our sentencing system? I understand, I get the idea that we are doing this in the strictest mean to ensure that others will not be, they don't have an incentive to do, because of course if I defile a girl and I am given 2 years, my friends, those of my caliber, we will check. We will want to confirm what's going on. So I get the strictness of the law. I understand, but we really need to interrogate some of these issues.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hannah, tell us.
For me, actually, the matter of this man being, let's just say his sentence was reduced to 75 years from a life imprisonment, which we don't understand. Where's the difference? What
it's
exactly?
The wording.
Yeah. What exactly did this judge think of? Okay, he just said maybe 75 years will be shorter, but we all know this guy will die in jail at the end of the day.
True.
Yeah, if it's this person to serve 75 years. And now back to the society, from what the society draws from this. One thing I'd like us to put in our minds, we are a society right now, carried and we are moved by the social media, right? So I think there was recently a video that was trending for TikTok, and this guy was saying about how living in jail is good. Yeah, you know, in this life in jail, the life you get in jail is good. You
don't
have
have
free
to
food.
fend, you know.
Yeah, you have free companionship. Just any friend you want to
Free
have.
home.
Yes, exactly.
No bills.
I don't maybe to someone who has watched that, again I take us back to the generation of now who has watched that. Some people will be like, see, maybe even that life may be good, so what's the problem if I do this? So I really don't think, in fact, the sentencing really brought about any impact actually. And as much as in fact that his years were reduced, well, we know that the Sexual Offence Act provides that for a child under the age of 11 years, the person who has defiled that child has to serve a life imprisonment. So I think also this judge again thought about that, and I think it was just to maybe to appease this man in this case, but then now he has been appeased. What's next? Yeah, we can see what's next. Again, I've talked about how social media is now influencing people. So what is the impact that has come from this? I really do not see the sense. Yes, of course, the sentencing was important, but I think there's something needed beyond that sentencing.
Something.
Yeah,
Something.
and it's
what?
not cancelling.
Something
Because,
like
you know, I am actually really concerned.
You are
about
against
people.
cancelling.
It's
You
not that
are
I'm
anything
against
against
cancelling.
cancelling.
However, you know, I think I talked about previously about this case whereby both these two people, the parties
They were
were told
taken for
go for
cancelling.
cancelling, yes. So when you sentence me to life imprisonment, and the other thing, yes, is cancelling. Yes, you've cancelled me, but where am I going to use that cancel? I'm in jail.
In jail.
I'm in
When
jail.
you
So am
pass
I going to cancel my fellow
Inmates.
inmate? Yeah, we're all being cancelled. So I don't think that's but I think to some extent I would really approve corporal punishment. I don't want to sound this like I would,
okay.
but I think that just giving someone life sentencing or an amount of years in jail, that alone doesn't do anything to this person, doesn't change this person. And yeah, that's my opinion.
Oh, okay. So then this leads us to the question of, in your view, what is the best way to punish a child defiler? Is defiler a word? So I have defiled a child, or David has defiled a child.
No, David.
Then how should we punish this person? Because now, according to our very learned friends over here, merely telling me I have 100 years doesn't do anything to deter others from committing this crime. You can tell us your views down here in the comment section. Reach us, probably you have a better solution, because Hannah here is for corporal punishment, wachapwe, wachapwe hadi they come back to their senses. David here started by telling us that it is a mental health issue, so I would believe he's telling us they need to go to asylums. I do not know. Take them to asylums, to Jaze Madare, to a council, wakikata to wachape, Anyway, so these are views that we'd like to hear from you, we'd like to get from you on the same. Now, I will not ask any further questions, but before we close, I would like for the both of you to give us a parting shot. You're in the shoes, the gown of a judge. What reform would you introduce so that we do away with this whole child defilement story, so that we can remedy it, not exactly doing away with it 100%. It all starts with a step. So what is that step you would take, given the opportunity, the support, the financial support? Everyone is for you, and they've given you the mandate of remedying, it's not a word again, the issue of child defilement.
Okay, thank you so much, Lindsay, for that very, very important question.
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily want to put myself to the shoes of a judge, because I think a judge, first of all, would really take the direction of a reform in terms of the law. But I would also like to think in terms of Wanjiko. Yes? And when I think of, in the perspective of the normal Mwananchi again, what's the first thing that would come to my head is that Is education always enough? I think it's really important to sensitize everyone on these matters, and not everyone gets to hear about this matter. Again, we are Africans and we come from a society whereby not everyone is informed.
Yeah,
as much as we all count ourselves literate or we have technology, we are not all informed.
True.
So we still have to try and make sure that this information reaches everyone, and everyone needs to understand that despite your gender, we are all equal. Yeah, so that is very, very important, and not thinking in the mind of a feminist. No, we are all equal. Yes.
Sorry for another day.
Yes, again, I think if I was not thinking in terms of a judge, I mentioned that part of corporal punishment. I think it's important. As much as people would say that this is wrong, how would that help? To some instances, it may be important. Maybe it's the only thing lacking. Yeah, because I've used the example of technology and social media and the kind of impact that is drawn from social media. So I think it's really important to think about it. Well, not very intense, but maybe this may be the one thing that will help others to see that, okay, this is wrong, I don't want to go through this.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah, but I will mainly focus on the part of sensitizing people. It is very important that everyone gets informed.
Okay, so for you, illiteracy is the disease of a nation.
It is.
That is where it starts. So after we have taught you, we'll beat you if you don't follow. That's perspective. David, what are your final remarks?
Just allow me to say this before we leave that one.
Okay.
Defilement is not the issue of having sex per se. It's also an issue of indecent acts. And indecent acts, are questions of whistling, catcalling, shaming. All that it falls within that bracket. So we have to be very careful. If we only expect that we'll pursue someone because they have, we have to get to the bottom.
It starts somewhere.
The little acts that we do. Secondly, that there are issues on sensitization, and I agree with Hannah that there are issues on sensitization. And for me, I take the approach of we need to give the victims of these defilement cases a voice. That no, it's okay for you to speak up. Because you'll be surprised how many people these things happen to, but they don't speak.
They don't
because you can't. There are so many gaps and clawbacks if you decide to speak. So for me, I think that's one. On sensitization, we need to really work on that as a nation, not even as a reform sector, as a nation, as a people. That you have a daughter, you have a son. Yes. And now number 3. And this for me, I feel I should say, is that we need, when we handle this, whoever handles these cases, so if I were in the position of a judge, I would really be very careful. Let's not forget that these defilement issues can be used for a certain motive, for a certain part. So we have to be very alive to that. Someone, we are not agreeing with you, you have to be. So when we are trying these cases, or when we are handling these cases, we have to be very objective, so that we don't miss the point. To ensure that the perpetrator is brought to book, but to ensure that justice is served to all. So for me, I think that we really need to work on corporal punishment. I don't know. I feel like it's a good thing, because if I know that after jailing, someone will be beating me for the next 75 years, I would really think about it, Yeah.
So you have joined her?
I would.
It's not being harsh.
I would, it's honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for you, what you're saying is, fine, we can do all these things, but you're joining her by saying now, let us introduce.
Yeah, let us introduce, but let's make sure that the people who are here, the victims, have a voice.
So for you, it's creating for them a safe space. And just to add on to what you said on them not having a voice, there's a survey that was done by the Ministry of, I think, Social Planning and something, by the that ministry. And according to that survey, that is a survey on violence against children, it was said that 9 out of 10 will not report. And as you have said, that safe space is not yet there. And that's, I believe, just like you and you, there's reason to create a safe space. Then we educate these people, and then when they don't comply, we beat them. I don't know, let's just bring corporal punishment, make Hannah the chairperson of that committee and say,
and just as we end up, we have to, perhaps you will do this, that just to let the people know that if, for example, you have been through these scenarios before, or it has happened to you, there's always a procedure. You go to a hospital and make sure you do that 72 hours before the time, and you get a P3, and the doctor will check you. They will check you, and you will get you will report to the police station, and they will help you write a recorded statement. And from there, those who are responsible can be able to take it from there. It's an injustice for you to keep quiet. Yes. And I think you will share, the screens and the numbers that people need to call if at all you have been a victim of the same, or someone who has gone through the same.
That's true. So when you are violated, when you're defiled, then you have to be a child. Now this is on the overall perspective. Speak up. Not everyone is bad. We have to also look at the good side of society and the section of society that is trying to create a positive change. That change will start with me and you trying to remedy these positions that, seem wrong to us, that are wrong to us. The injustices committed against us, they can be helped if we only speak up, Thank you so much, David. Thank you so much, Hannah, for joining us. We could go on and on the subject of child defilement. We have diverse views and opinions. It is allowed. Your opinion is your opinion. But I thank you so much for taking your time to join us today. And I hope you have learned a thing or two from this, be it the definition of child defilement, be it that probably we should introduce corporal punishment, be it that remedying is not a word, take something home. And we are hoping to see you once again here at Massive TV. I have been your host, Lindsay Asiome, and I am looking forward to hearing from you. Of course, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment. And if your friend hasn't liked, subscribed, or shared, please tell them to do so. Thank you.